Okay, so I've annotated my poems now, and I've sort of talked you through what I've annotated and why. Now that I've got that clear sense of, right, this is the meaning of the poems, this is what the poems are about, how am I actually going to start writing my response? Both poets describe their experiences during a time of conflict, write about both poems' effect on you, show how they are similar and how they are different. Now, the way that I would approach this is I'd want to give an integrated approach from the beginning. I don't want to waste time. Here's this poem A, here's this poem B. That's a risky strategy that I'm not going to compare, and the comparison is double the weighting of anything else. So from the very beginning, I'm going to write a clear opening sentence comparing the two poems, and I'm going to say both poems contrast the idea of innocence with the idea of awareness in a time of conflict. And both poems look at children in a world that adults have rendered more dangerous by their conflict, and the impact on children that conflict has. And also obviously on the impact on adults too. So I'm going to have an introduction that really connects the main themes of both poems, and then I'm going to start tracking from the beginning of the two poems, and I'm going to try in every paragraph to mention both poems. So if I start with the two-line stanza in More Dangerous Air, the Cuban Missile Crisis, I'm then going to maybe refer to the title of September 1918 and the dating and the placing of that one. So that's going to be my first point that I make. If I carry on and look at the alliterative Cuban Cursed Sky, the nuclear threat, then maybe I can contrast that with the first section here, because the first section is so idyllic. So I maybe have half a paragraph on this stanza, and then finish off that paragraph with the contrast with the idyllic imagery. Now I really want to go into detail about the boys and the red berries, so I'm going to start my next paragraph with that and the symbolism, and then I'm going to switch to this poem, and I'm going to contrast how the persona has to follow the drill and the instructions and is made painfully aware of the conflict in a way that the boys aren't. So she's hiding under the desk, they're lying flat on their faces, but it's very different purposes here. The leisure and the enjoyment of the red berries versus the terror, sheer terror of being under the desk. So there's a lovely point of contrast there that I'm going to go into. And then I think I'm going to talk a little bit about the line structure. So we've got the interesting enjambment, death is real, which end stops death. Not end stopping, puts it on the end of the line. And this bit here, contrasting with the anaphora of the sweet memory that she talks about there. And then I really want to contrast the endings of the two poems. The fact that she's saying she doesn't have time to think about this now because of the conflict, the broken world, and how she is basically can't get away from the gloom of reality. So really want to look at the word gloom, the word broken, how those two words affect the way you read the whole poem and the atmosphere of the whole poem. So my structure for my exam response is going to be going through the poems, but constantly cross-referencing between the two. And in the exam, I might recommend having a highlighter, and as soon as I've covered something in my annotation, highlight it so I know I've done it, and then just make a beeline for the points that I think are going to be the best ones to make. It's not a checklist, so if I don't say something about, personification here, and if I don't say something about caesura here, I'm not going to lose marks for that. It's a positively marked exam. Anything that you can say about any of these things in both poems will earn you marks, but I guess it's a good idea to think about covering techniques and structure, because you don't want to ignore the way the poem is set out, the way the poem is put together. That's obviously one continuous stanza. Here the stanzas are important because they reflect different purposes in each one. So it's definitely going to be good to show an awareness of structure in some way. But as I say, it isn't a checklist. As long as you structure your response in an integrated way, cross-referencing from one poem to the other, they're not looking for pages and pages and pages. They just want to see that you can compare, you can use quotes, you can discuss the language and the techniques, and you get the meaning that the poet is doing.